Season 2 of More Able Than This is sponsored by the Music Department at Georgia College and State University. In addition to bachelor's degrees in music and music therapy, including a BA plus MAT path to initial teacher certification, GCNSU offers an online master's degree in music education for certified teachers seeking to expand or improve their knowledge and skills, as well as a hybrid Master of Arts in Teaching degree for those seeking initial music teacher certification in Georgia. We accept certified and licensed teachers from across the U.S., and Georgia certification is reciprocal with most other states, so don't let state boundaries deter you from applying. Apply now to start in summer or fall 2026. Contact tina.holmes-davis@gcsu.edu for more information about the graduate music education degrees at Georgia College and State University. The Belle McCroy Music Collective empowers music educators and student leaders through purposeful teaching, artistic excellence, and transformative leadership. Grounded in fundamentals, driven by equity, and inspired by community, we cultivate musical independence and champion the responsible stewardship of each individual's musical gifts. Through coaching, consulting, and collaboration, we help music programs thrive. One note, one leader, one classroom at a time. For more information, visit bellemcroymusiccollective.com. That's Belle McCroy Music Collective, all one word, .com. Hi guys, it's me again. Welcome to the 20th episode of More Able Than This, the podcast where we talk about just everything regarding disability and music education. I'm super excited to be here because I had no idea what I was doing when we started, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. But my process so far has been I generate the material, I invite the guests, and I record, make all the recordings. And then I send everything off to my grad assistant, and they send back a podcast episode. And it's so cool, and I'm so fortunate to have these resources. But in our first 20 episodes, we have been able to address cerebral palsy, autism, hidden disabilities, and, marching with a service dog and a marching band. And we've been able to collaborate with our colleagues in the UK who are working on the same issues and with the same struggles that we're working on. And so I'm super excited that so far we have been able to work with everything that has come our way. We've been able to find strategies and resources to help you in your classroom so that you can, contact your local music therapist or, music educators who have experience or nonprofits or whatever we have so that you can get the help you need to teach all of your students. All right, so thank you for staying with us. And I would like to challenge you to challenge me. We have done 20 episodes and we have addressed a lot, and we found resources and strategies for a lot, but we have just scratched the surface. There are so many more ways of being human than we have been able to address so far. So if you have a student that maybe you have successfully taught in a way that surprised even you, please give me a call and we can get you on here so that you can share your success and you can share your resources and ideas with others. Or if you have a student and you're just completely lost and you really want to teach them, but you don't know how, then, drop a comment and we'll see what we can do to support you. We can specifically look into that need. Because what we're trying to help you do here is create a universal design and learning system for your classroom. So universal design is the idea that elevators, curb cutouts, all of these things should just be built into public spaces so that regardless of ability or disability, everybody can get around. Let's say in the post office or the library or whatever it is, everybody can get into the building and everybody can get around in the building and do what they need to do while they're there. So this means that we don't have to stop business when somebody with a wheelchair shows up and, guide them around to the back of the building where there might be a ramp and then through the service area and the kitchen and whatever it is so that they can get to the place that they need to be. So they're able to do it alone, and that takes the burden off of us. So let's take that into our music classroom. If we have planned our space and our processes well enough for our students to come in, and regardless of ability or disability, they can maneuver the space, they can follow your processes, they can do what they need to do, then that takes the stress off of you as the teacher and off of us as teachers to deal with every individual student. They can do a lot by themselves. And then that also creates space so that when we have the student who has a need that we have not been able to prepare for, either because it hasn't occurred to us or because it's not the kind of thing that you design universally, then we can take that time and deal with that one individual human being. For instance, if we have one, we might not make large print copies of the music all the time because that might be a very specific need. So instead of having universally large print music for everybody, we might need to make large print music for a specific third clarinet player. But because we have other systems built in, we have systems for our students who need like a lot of reminders, our students with dysgraphia, like, for instance, it sounds like they might just struggle with math, but a lot of times they struggle with time. And when you struggle with time, that leads to disorganization. So if we have a lot of reminders that are automated in our system so that we don't have to do reminders for every individual student. And I know what you're thinking. And this is the beauty of universal design. You're thinking, well, all of my students need a reminder. And that's what universal design is. We built the elevator for wheelchair users, but the elevator also helps everybody. Or we also built the curb cutout for wheelchair users, but the parents with strollers, the students with rolly bags, the professionals with the rolly cart, whatever, everybody benefits from the curb cutout. So we might have those reminders, built into our system, into our band app or our whatever it is that we use. I can't even remember the apps that we use. Or, that might be the universal design for that student with dysgraphia who struggles to remember and who needs those reminders. Or we might have our student leadership and group me to do those reminders because we have a student who needs that, but it's going to help all of the students. Now I'm thinking specifically of a very, a little middle school percussionist who was very dear to me and struggled with, organization as a young person. And that's going to help everybody. And that's the beauty of universal design, because now instead of doing those reminders for your student who needs reminders and everybody else who needs reminders, you have time to go blow up the music for that third, I think I said third part clarinet player, might have been second anyway. So we're going to keep building these processes and the physical environment and the processes that we use so that we can take a lot of stress off of ourselves and open up space whenever we have a student who actually needs something that isn't a common need that we can put out for everyone. So I do remember my husband was the band director at Houston County High School for a long time. And y'all remember when the COVID pandemic shut us down, the first thing that we as teachers had to do was communicate, locate and communicate with all of our students so that we could continue education such as it was. So a lot of people, spent weeks looking for ways to communicate with students. They made home visits, they were making phone calls and trying to just reach out and make sure that those students could access the systems that we were trying to put into place for the first time ever, but kind of fly it as you build it or build it as you fly it. But my husband's communication plan was such that he didn't lose a single student because he already had that communication plan in place. Now, I think that we have to back up to Wally Shaw here and, recognize the shoulders that we stand on, because I think there was some communication plans that he built that stayed while my husband was in that program. But regardless of all of that, the communication plan that was already in place was sufficient, even in the face of a crisis that we had never anticipated and never had before. So anyway, what happened was he had communication down from him through students and layers of student leadership so that every person had a communication coming down and also could communicate back up to him. So I think his plan for the students was group me. And I think what he did was use the marching band student structure. So his communication went down through like drum majors and captains and whatever to section leaders. And the section leaders each had a group me with their whole section. The drum majors and captains had all of the section leaders and so forth and so on. So that, it was just a matter of it going through the system to every student. And then the students who had issues could come right back up. And that had been in use already for the entire year. So whenever they needed to use it and they needed to rely on it, it was already there. And everybody already understood it. And then I think the parents had the same thing kind of through band boosters and through kind of a social media account, where in a closed social media account or a private social media account, they were able to disperse information to parents and parents were able to respond. Because remember, our communication plans do need to be two ways. We need to be able to get information to our stakeholders and they need to be able to ask questions back up the line. And the other nice thing, I'm going to take a little tangent about this tiered plan, is that, if a clarinet player has a question and the section leader can answer the question, it doesn't go any higher up the line. So at each place, you have an opportunity for somebody to answer a question before it hits the director. So, if you're teaching 250 or 300 students a day, then you can't possibly answer all of the questions. But by having this tiered communication plan, the question stops with whoever can answer it. And so instead of the director answering 250 or 300 questions about socks, then you have 15 section leaders who are each answering 15 questions about socks, and it stops there. So as your communication plan becomes part of your UDL classroom, and by having a plan in place, and your plan doesn't have to look like that, however your plan looks, as long as it's effective, becomes part of your UDL. And basically, again, what we're talking about here is planning space, our physical space and our social space and our processes, our procedures, rituals, and routines to create space for us to deal with individual needs. Because when I get that IEP or 504, I am legally bound. Remember, IEP is a federal document. So it is a felony not to follow it. And so if Billy Bob Bo, whoever his name is, needs preferential seating, that may not be in my individual, or that might not be in my UDL plan, because my UDL plan, I'm still, even though I have room, I'm still thinking that, my tubas are going to sit in the back and, however I plan it. So if Billy Bob is a tuba player, but he needs preferential seating, perhaps he's got a cochlear implant and he needs his ear turned. He needs to be close enough to the director and have his cochlear implant turned in a way to hear the teacher speak and to differentiate the teacher from the background noise around him. Then I need to deal with that. That is an issue that requires my attention, both because I have to figure out how to have a tuba player who's not in the tuba section, and also because I have to ensure that, that particular cochlear implant is pointing to the way that will allow this child to learn in my classroom. So if I have cleared up my communication plan, if I've cleared up this process so that I'm not inundated with questions by socks, I have left enough room to deal with Billy Bob and to be able to sit down and have a conversation with Billy Bob about what this means for him. Where do you think you should sit? You've been in band for quite a while because, hopefully you've been in school quite a while. What do you know from your experience that would help you? What can we do? And then we can actually try a few things. Guys, you don't have to be successful your first time. It is okay to try Billy Bob over here at the end of the trumpets and then say, yeah, no, that's not really working. And it's okay to try him up here with the oboes or over here with the bass clarinets, the low reeds, it's okay to try several things until we find something that works. And yeah, just keep Billy Bob in the process and keep your space and your procedures and your rituals and routines automated enough that you have time to address this individual need and guys to document it. Because if somebody comes in and says, have you been accommodating for Billy Bob's cochlear implant? It's not enough to say yes. You have to be able to say, okay, on this day we tried this and this is what happened. And on this day we tried this and this is what happened. So, I mean, it might be okay usually to say yes. But when things get muddy, when things go wrong, they're going to want to log. But again, your communication plan is such that your students get that communication and get their questions answered without you addressing everything. And your room is set up in such a way that, you don't have to stop every time a soccer player breaks their leg. I remember I had a tuba player who broke his collarbone wrestling, and so the only thing I had to do was go into the back closet and pull out a tamer and sit the tamer at his seat. And I think we switched him from one of the full-size tubas to a three-quarter tuba until his collarbone healed. And it took like 5 minutes because we had everything else lined up. So I think that I was even able to start class on time that day. But your wrestlers and your soccer players and your football players and your basketball players, they're gonna get hurt, especially in middle school when their body's growing faster than their mind can keep up with. So think of ways when we're even when we're considering how to deal with students with disabilities, guys, there are more ways to be different. Humanity is not just the what we would consider able. What we consider able is just the mean. And if we think of a standard bell curve, we have people out here and we have people out here, but the full range of humanity is here. And we like to plan for the center and pretend like that's the whole thing, but that's not the whole thing. There are lots and lots of ways of being human, and we cannot possibly stop and plan for every one of them. So when we use universal design, we can plan for the commonalities. Because when I look at my students with ADHD, my students with autism, my students with everything, me as a student with a traumatic brain injury, frustration is a very common, we might have breakdowns, we might have meltdowns. And so if I ignore all of these labels and just go to the breakdown, to the meltdown, what can I do as a teacher to prevent it from getting to here? And then if we by some chance do get to here, what can I do here? Then I don't have to address every single diagnosis and I don't have to address every student, because I can build in my universal design plan what I'm going to do for this particular behavior and this particular need. And then I've created space for the blind student who can't find the braille because the braille doesn't make any sound. Guys, if you're going to make braille signs, make the braille sign make sound so that I can use the braille. Because, I remember watching a little video of a guy, a cane user. Actually, he was blind to the point that he used a cane, and he was in a hotel trying to find his room. So he was bonk, 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 bonk up the wall looking for the door so that once he found the door, he could find the sign, and then he could feel the braille to find the sign. And he said people kept coming to the door because they thought he was knocking on the door. And it took him this whole long time because first he had to figure out which way the numbers were going to know which way to even go down the hall. And then he had to go down the hall until he found his door. He had to find each door and he had to find his door. So guys, if you're going to make braille, make it make sound so that we can find it. And then, like I've been saying, I'm sorry, I keep tangent and then come back to the point, which if you've been in my class, that's how I operate. You're going to build those space and processes that we can use to accommodate for many different things, like that frustration. And then that creates the space so that I can actually take the blind student, if the blind student's the one I'm dealing with, and at least point them in the right direction. If you've ever known somebody that's visually impaired, all of the people that I know that are visually impaired are extremely independent, and that's important to them to be extremely dependent. So they don't necessarily want us to grab their arm and take them there. But if we can at least point them in the right direction and get them started, then we have time for that because we're not dealing with frustration because that's built in. A special thanks to Zildjian Cymbals for their support of the Center for Music Education at Georgia College and State University. The Zildjian Company has been synonymous with setting the standard for the development and manufacture of high-performance musical instruments since 1623. As the world's leading maker of cymbals, drumsticks, and percussion mallets, Zildjian products are sold across the globe under the Zildjian, Vic Firth, and Balter brands, and are the standard to which all cymbals, drumsticks, and mallets are measured. The Center for Music Education at Georgia College is excited to offer a classroom instrument repair workshop in conjunction with the Band Instrument Repair Academy in June 2026 at the historic Georgia College and State University campus in Milledgeville, Georgia. Contact tina.holmes-davis@gcsu.edu for the registration link. Space is limited, so register today. All right, and I think that is an overview. There's a lot more to be said about universal design and learning, and a lot more to be said about universal design and learning and music education specifically. And there are so many more ways to be human than we've even scratched the surface. IDEA covers 13 conditions, and those conditions include that autism, that cerebral palsy, the visual impairment and things like that we've discussed here. So, do your look, ask questions. Thank you for staying with me this long. And, drop in the comment section on this video either, some encouragement, some things that maybe we've done for you, done well, or things that you've done well. Ignore me and look at what you've done. Or, drop in the comments some issues where you just go, Tina, you don't understand. I have a student who needs this, and I don't have anything for them, and I really want to help. What can I do with the resources I have? And I'll be happy to help as much as I can. Or, challenge me. Say, I don't think you can do this, and, I'll see what I can do. So far, we haven't been defeated. So let's see what we can do. And this side of the podcast sometimes gets really lonely. It's very quiet. We don't get a lot of feedback. So please, give us some feedback and stay with us through the rest of season 2 and hopefully into season 3 next year as we continue to look at all things related to teaching students with disability in the music classroom.
This podcast was created and recorded by Dr. Tina Holmes-Davis. It was edited and produced by Landon Frazier. Music composed and performed by Brent MacDonald. More Able Than Dis is an initiative of the Center for Music Education at Georgia College.